8:18, and today, Pix 11 Morning News is kicking off National News Literacy Week, which aims to help you, the viewer, really spot the difference between facts and fiction when it comes to the news.
So the 24-hour news cycle brought on by the internet, social media, it can really lead to a lot of confusion over real news versus fake news. Joining us this morning is Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist and founder of the News Literacy Project, that being Alan Miller. Thanks for joining us.
Good to be here.
All right, so let's really illustrate the problem out there. We've seen the president tweet about fake news. You see the word out there all the time. We saw some of it in the election, right? But the most recent example is the Kobe Bryant untimely death yesterday, and all that information that was surfacing prematurely about who else was on board and this, that, and the other. So help us decipher when to know what's real and what's not.
Well, I think that the first thing people need to do is to pause. And before we believe anything, share anything, act on anything, ask ourselves what we're looking at. Is this from a credible source? Is this intended to inform you in a dispassionate way, or to incite you in some way, or to exploit you? And then, check it out and look and see what the sourcing is, what the documentation is, and whether this is something that's truly credible.
So you kind of have to be your own investigative reporter.
Seriously, you have to. Journalism 101 is to get the story right. Not be first all the time, but to get it right. And you used to be a journalist. So what prompted you to leave the world of journalism and say, okay, I want to begin this news literacy project?
Well, in 2006, I was an investigative reporter in the Washington Bureau of the Los Angeles Times, and I was invited to speak to my daughter's classmates at her middle school about what I did as a journalist and why it mattered. And I passed the first major test when Julia gave me a hug, so I hadn't totally embarrassed her. And as I was walking across the parking lot, I thought, if a lot of journalists brought their expertise and experience to bear, this could be truly meaningful. I was concerned about two things at that time. One was how my own daughter was accessing and evaluating this tsunami of sources of information of such varying credibility and accountability. And the other thing was the wrenching transformation that was underway in the news business, and whether there would continue to be a demand for quality journalism.
Absolutely.
So that night, Julia brought home 175 handwritten thank you notes. We read them all out loud, and that was the seeds of what has become the News Literacy Project.
So is social media, the internet, all these different sources to blame for just the rise of fake news?
Well, we live in what should be a digital golden age, with more verified and credible information available to us than ever before. But we're being overwhelmed by a tsunami of misinformation that inflames us and divides us. So we feel we have a responsibility to give the next generation the tools to navigate this challenging information landscape in a way that unites us around verifiable, agreed upon facts.
So what are those tangible tools?
Well, what we do in the News Literacy Project is we create curriculum and other resources to empower educators to teach middle and high school students how to know what news and information to trust, and to give them an appreciation of the First Amendment and the role of a free press in a democracy. We want them to be engaged and informed participants in the civic life of their communities and the country. So the primary way we do this is through our Checkology virtual classroom.
Checkology.
Yeah, and we're showing video right now of our James Ford, educating some youth right here in our area as well. And it's so interesting because you look at social media and everybody thinks they're a journalist now. The citizen on the street thinks that they can get information. So you have some events this week to help decipher and help people out. What are your events?
Yes, so this week we're kicking off in partnership with the Scripps Company, the first ever National News Literacy Week. There'll be a series of public service announcements, promotional ads, and news stories to elevate the profile of news literacy and to give the public tools and resources that can help them become more news literate. So we will be making one of our lessons in Checkology available each day. There'll be a theme that will help the public to do things like discern news from opinion, advertising, and propaganda, to spot misinformation, and to recognize bias in what they encounter and their own bias that they bring to what they consume. As you know, Scripps stations around the country have been working with students in local schools to create pieces that they will be airing. We're also encouraging people to take what we call the easiest quiz of all time, which underscores the fact that even if you think you know something, you need to check it out. And people can find all of these resources and more at newsliteracyweek.org.
Okay. Sounds good. I love this. I think it's so valuable, especially in this day and age right now. Think about it. When we were in school, we come from different generations, but even then, social media did not exist, and it was no way of trying to get that information out there for everybody. But thank you very much for coming in this morning.
We appreciate it.